And welcome into the Monday edition, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Monday morning. Hope everybody had an awesome weekend. Joe Rexrode, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing great. I feel really close to you today.
I feel very close to you today as well.
That's very nice. Place is falling apart, man. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Okay, I don't see any green. Is anybody else in this studio wearing green? You're wearing some green. There we go. Keezer?
Max got you covered.
Max is wearing the green. All right, well, check this out. See? Right here, baby. See this? Is this on the camera? Temple Bar in Dublin, right there, folks. If you ever get to Double Iron, go to the Temple Bar. Is it touristy? It is a little touristy, but by golly, the Guinness tastes like it's poured from heaven. Check it out. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Get some corned beef.
How was your weekend at Bridgestone Arena?
It was good. There were some great games, and obviously this league's incredible. We saw that. The selection committee certainly agreed with that last night when the bracket came out. But I will say it was a little anticlimactic because Florida beat the crap out of everybody. Now, Tennessee gets credit for me for fighting. In particular, Zakai Ziegler, Jordan Gainey stepped up big yesterday. They pushed them. They gave them a run. But, I mean, getting a defensive rebound against Florida is like me trying to button like that hard button, when I've been especially drinking too many Guinnesses and I have to go to a wedding or something. I mean, it's a freaking – every defensive rebound is a freaking miracle against them. They are unbelievable. I think they're the best team in this league, in this country. I think they're the national championship favorite going in. But it was a good weekend, and I think it was still a very good weekend for Tennessee. Big one over Auburn.
Yep.
They get the 2. I like where they are. I know we're going to get into all that. There was a lot of good ball, great crowds. Tornado didn't hit. Overall,
Thankfully.
We'll call it a win.
Yeah, good stuff on that front for sure. Tennessee Auburn was awesome. I loved every second of that one. Looked like Tennessee was pulling away in the second half, and then Auburn makes their run, pulls it within 2, and Tennessee's able to survive after that and make some big plays down the stretch. I thought the environment in the game was awesome between Tennessee and Auburn, and Tennessee gets that one done. That's a huge win for them. Obviously Florida comes in and smokes everybody. So the bottom line for Tennessee, did it change all that much throughout the tournament? Probably not. I mean, they were 2 seed going into it. They're a 2 seed coming out of it. So I saw some Tennessee fans talking about that yesterday. It was like, well, yeah, that was all great, but now all you've done is really tire yourself out before the NCAA tournament comes around. I enjoyed the heck out of Tennessee Auburn, though.
I would argue, though, because I will be in Lexington this week, and Tennessee will be in Lexington this week, and I do not believe they would have been there had they not done what they did. I think it would be Alabama. It would have been Alabama. Instead, Alabama gets sent to Cleveland. Is that the biggest deal in the world? No, but I think you might see some more Vols fans there than you would have in Cleveland. And so, and it's a place they've played before. It's a place where this program has had a lot of success in recent years. By the way,
it's true.
Michelle, who I saw this weekend, which was awesome. I think they earned that. And so let's see. Let's just trade spots. I haven't even done this yet. Let's trade their spots with Alabama. So Tennessee's sitting there at the 2 in the Midwest. Houston is their 1. Bama is sitting there as a 2, and Duke is their 1. I'd rather be Tennessee, and I think Tennessee would be they'd be in Cleveland, and they'd be going to Newark to play probably Duke. I know Cooper Flagg's hurt, but I think he's going to be fine by then. And I think Duke, they might be the second scariest team out there to me after Florida. I like Tennessee's chances better of beating a Houston and Indy than I do of beating a Duke and Newark.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could certainly make that argument. And look, Tennessee is going to have between now and Thursday to get healed up. So it's not like they're playing Tuesday. So I think sometimes the wearing yourself out gets overblown a little bit. They've got some time here to get going. And look, I mean, let's be frank here. Now it's the NCAA tournament, so I ought to be very careful when I say this. They are playing Wofford the first game, so you shouldn't really have to play like Ziegler 40 minutes in this game.
Right. Beat Wofford. Beat Wofford by 20. That's what you should do. Wofford's good. The SoCon is good, but yes, I agree. I mean, look, it can suck to be in these tournaments and beat I'm watching it yesterday. I'm like, man, these teams are just, Zeger's on the floor, flopping around. He's like, flexing when he gets a loose ball. And I'm like, my God, you guys could just be right now ice bathing and getting ready for the bracket, and you still lose the game. Like the Big Ten tournament yesterday, Michigan makes this run to the final, which is great for Michigan. And then here's your reward. You still are just a 5 seed, and you play in Denver Thursday. Bye. And it's like, God,
what's the point?
Right.
Yeah.
It's obviously everybody, competitors, they want to win these tournaments, of course. And there's, it's a good achievement, but yeah, sometimes it can be counterproductive. I think the Vols, when you're a high enough seed, like you said, you should be okay. You handle your first game, you get that extra rest, and then you get into, what could be, a real tough game for the Vols in the second round against either UCLA or Utah State. For people who don't watch Mountain West hoops, Utah State's a legit team too.
So 14 of 16 teams from the SEC are in. We speculated that could be the case heading into this, but now we know it, and it's official. 14 of the 16 are in. Joe, it's incredible. Like with, barring what I think you and I never want to see, along with the general populace, which is expansion of this tournament. Are we ever going to see anything quite like this again? Like 14 to 16 is absurd, and that's what the SEC has pulled off this year.
It's insane. And the thing is, I know some people will want to poo-poo it and say, yeah, but, these leagues are so huge. Right. There's also never been a higher percentage of a league. So, again, go back to 18 leagues. Go back, There's never been a higher percentage of a league to get in the NCAA tournament. It's whatever it is, 87.5% of the league is in the NCAA tournament. So the old record was the Big East of 11 in 2011. Well, they had 16 teams too, just like the SEC does. So, this is incredible. And it is a validation from the selection committee of everything we've been saying. Look, when you dominate like they did, again, no league has ever dominated the non-conference since the ACC of 1984. That's the ACC of Michael Jordan at North Carolina, Muggsy Bogues at Wake Forest, Len Bias at Maryland, Jay Billis and Tommy Amaker and Johnny Dawkins at Duke. They won more than 89% of their games. The SEC this year won 88.9% of its non-league games. That's historically dominant, and they beat all the best teams from the other leagues, and here they are. I did not think Texas would get in. I thought it'd be 13, but Texas did get in. And by the way, the selection committee having Texas in, okay, they had huge wins. They had a ton of losses. They had huge wins. Okay, then I get it. You can't have them in and have North Carolina in, because the argument is the exact opposite. The argument for North Carolina is they had one big win, right, one quad one win, but they scheduled hard. They were good in quad two. There's an eyeball test and all that subjectivity. But again, you're saying that Texas, because of their better wins, edges out like Indiana, Boise State, even West Virginia. Okay. But then North Carolina can't be in. If North Carolina's in, Texas can't be in. That's and Joe Lunardi is, went off on that yesterday. He's totally right. That's a completely mixed message on what matters. So, we're always going to complain about the selection committee on this day for something, and that's the one. But what it did say is that the SEC is dominant. And now, Robbie, the SEC's got to back it up. The rest of the all I hear now is, the media narrative, the SEC, shoved it, ESPN, the money, and all this stuff, right?
Yep.
That's what people are always going to say about the SEC. It's legit. What they've done is what they've done. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's real. But the SEC has been very disappointing in the NCAA tournament, even as the league has elevated. They have won Final Four the last 3 years. Their performance is below expectations, way beyond any other league. And they gotta kick some butt here in this tournament. It's time to back it up.
You think Greg Sakie's foaming at the mouth today? He's like, oh, we should have got 16 in. Should have been 16 of 16.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe they can come up with something where there's 16 auto bids for the SEC. And just,
we need more allocations.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I hope not. Although I will say, South Carolina, whatever their record is, it's not good. They're not bad. They're pretty good. I swear. They probably actually could have gone 10-8 in the ACC, but they're not in the ACC. They did beat the second best ACC team. Well, I guess they might be the third best, right? Clemson.
Yes,
but they did beat that. The worst team in the SEC did beat them. And by the way, I guess since Louisville beat Clemson, you can call them the second best team. They got a freaking 8 seed.
I saw that.
I mean, like, you look at their resume,
And their
like,
coach was very upset about it, by the way.
yeah. Well, I mean, they should have gotten a 6
Yeah.
for sure to me, but there's always seeding stuff too. I don't think in the SEC there was really anything like surprising or way out of the realm. The SEC got respect.
Do you think North Carolina got in because their name is North Carolina?
Yeah. Well, look, again, it's just like with football. What happens? They all talk about everything. They go through every data point of every team, and they talk and talk and talk. And then, okay, put your vote in. Everybody sits at a thing, and they push a button and vote for teams. Now, what people are saying is, the selection committee chair, Bubba Cunningham, the North Carolina AD. Great. Now, look, I like that he's not allowed to participate in those discussions. I mean, I don't think it's like that ridiculous, but yes, human bias is a thing here. Okay. And I absolutely think that these people voting, some of them probably were just like North Carolina, somewhere deep in their heart. How can North Carolina not be in this tournament? So, yeah, I think that that's a factor. These are humans with biases. And so I thought Boise State should have been in over North Carolina. So the committee's like, well, the ACC is going to have like 3 teams, and then the Mountain West is going to have 5 teams? No, that doesn't work for me. I mean, I think things like that, even though they're not part of the official team-by-team comparison, they come into play when you vote.
So the bracket is set. We'll go through Tennessee's path. We'll go through Vanderbilt's path. Lipscomb in the tournament as well. Shout out to them. So some local teams with some work to do this week as the NCAA tournament begins. We'll take your thoughts on all that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. More coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on the NCAA tournament and the bracket, which is set here on the program. Joe, let's begin with Vanderbilt's path. So Vanderbilt is a 10 seed in the East here, with Duke as the 1 seed in that part of the bracket. And if Vanderbilt takes care of their first game against St. Mary's, Joe, which is a big if, but if they do, could have Alabama versus Vanderbilt in the round of 32 there. How about that? Could be awesome.
Yeah, and this is where I know that might seem weird, right? And I'm sure Vanderbilt, although you're focused on St. Mary's, but it's like, God, really? Because a lot of these coaches and players this weekend were talking about, like it'd be nice to kind of like get away from this league and go unleash it on some other leagues. So it's like, here's your reward, Vanderbilt. You beat St. Mary's in a mild upset, which, by the way, I think Vanderbilt absolutely can beat St. Mary's. And here's Alabama for you. Congrats.
If Alabama could take down our good friends Robert Morris.
That is true. Bobby Moe. Watch out for Bobby Moe in a 15-2. I will say, like, Alabama, that Grant Nelson's hurt. He's getting his knee looked at. That could be a real problem for them in terms of advancing. They think he's going to be okay, but he's been playing really well. And you look at what Florida did to them on Saturday. They're not playing their best basketball, but for Vanderbilt and St. Mary's, St. Mary's is one of the slowest teams out there, one of the best defensive teams out there. They've got a big time, they always have a huge center. They do again this year. They got Marciulionis' kid at guard. I like Vanderbilt. I do. I think Vanderbilt's got a really good chance to win that game, but you have to try to get some in transition, and you got to figure it out inside. When Vanderbilt plays like a really, big center, Vanderbilt is, their size sometimes can be an issue. They have to be a little bit creative on the defensive end, but I think they got a really good chance, and I think we might just see a little SEC. And that's the problem. When you have 14 teams, you cannot. I can tell you, as the world's worst bracketologist, who only got 65 of 68 correct on my final guess.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not that good, man. You gotta. I mean, 2 misses is fine, but 3 misses. West Virginia, I cannot believe they didn't get in the freaking tournament. But anyway, that's a problem. Putting this together, it's like, well, if you got 14 teams, you're going to have some second round rematches in the SEC. You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
So here's one of them potentially.
So Vanderbilt, it did not go to plan for them. Obviously, in the SEC tournament, they lose to Texas. They've lost 3 in a row heading into this thing, against Arkansas, at Georgia, and in the SEC tournament against Texas. So you're kind of reeling a little bit in terms of the results heading into this. Having said that, obviously, this is incredible success for Vanderbilt and Mark Byington in year 1.
Yes,
getting to this point, and now we'll see can they get a win when the NCAA tournament rolls around. If they do, we'll worry about Vanderbilt and Alabama when that time comes. But what a story now that it's official and they're in and they're a 10 seed that Vanderbilt has pulled this off in year 1 under Mark Byington.
Incredible job by him. First time for the program in 8 years. First year to do this and in this league, in the wins they got in this league. Again, Tennessee, Kentucky. I mean, like they got big time wins, and it's a great job. So, no question. Look, the losing streak stinks, but they get to reset now. They got extra time to practice and figure it out. And if they had not lost like they've done, they'd be an 8-9 right now. So they'd be an 8-9, and they'd be looking at, I guess they could be looking at Auburn, or they'd be looking at Duke, Houston, or Florida in the second round with a win. And frankly, I'd rather be taking on any of these 2s. And Bama, I mean, I think I might rather, I think I'd rather take on Bama than Michigan State, Tennessee, or St. John's, which are the other 2. So could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise here for Vanderbilt. I don't rule out a Sweet 16.
So on Tennessee's front, they are in the Midwest bracket. As you mentioned, they're going to Lexington. They've got Wofford coming up in their first game on Thursday. If they win that game, they'll take on the winner of UCLA and Utah State. And if they win that game, they could potentially, Joe, be looking at Kentucky in the Sweet 16. Now, they lost both games to Kentucky earlier this year. It is very difficult to beat a team 3 times, but Kentucky has played well against Tennessee. Again, that's a potential Sweet 16 matchup. We'll get to that when it comes around. But Tennessee's the 2 seed in the Midwest bracket, with Houston being the 1 in that bracket. What do you make of Tennessee's draw, where they've landed, and their path to get through that bracket?
Yeah, I like it. I think that they earned themselves a better path and gave Bama the harder path. And I really think it's basically interchangeable between those 2 seeds. And whoever was ahead of the other on the overall seed line was going to get Lexington. So we know Tennessee is ahead of Alabama, and they should be, by beating Auburn and how they performed. And, of course, beating Alabama. Sometimes it's close enough where a head-to-head can matter. And so I think that it is worthwhile that they earn something good this weekend. You look at that bracket. I think the toughest region of the whole bracket is the West. I think the West is insane. Florida, I don't want to say they got screwed, but my goodness, with St. John's as their 2, even like Maryland as their 4, Missouri as their 6. Like there's some. How about UConn as your 8
if they win,
seed?
they could get UConn.
Yeah, and UConn has been disappointing, but Kansas is the 7. I think that, you could make a case for the Midwest as the weakest region, just because, Purdue is a 4. I think Purdue is a real upset possibility against High Point. Purdue's defense right now is a disaster, and it has been for a while consistently. They can't protect the rim. They're just bad on D. And so I look at this region. I think there's, opportunity. Like you said, the idea of Tennessee and Kentucky and Indy in a Sweet 16 game, that's pretty good. Now, Illinois could have something to say about that against Kentucky, so we'll see. But I think Tennessee should handle Wofford. I don't see anything. I watched Wofford's title game. I just, how it goes, man. Any of these games could get interesting. The big underdog goes nuts from 3 and everything's falling. The whole building gets into it. This is what's what's great about this tournament. But they should handle it. And then UCLA or Utah State, it will not be an easy pass there to the Sweet 16. And it's always with Tennessee. You talk about like the shooting. I really love how Gainey's playing. I think Chaz Lanier's going to be fine. I think they have enough shooting now. They need Igor Milicic to get himself in gear. He was really disappointing this weekend. He did not step up to the level of physicality and intensity.
He's getting his head ripped off by Rick Barnes a couple times too.
Well, late in that Auburn game, he drops. It was right in front of me on press row. He drops a pass from Ziegler. Ziegler catches the ball, screaming at him. I'm like, well, he's not wrong. So then the next time down, they call a play. It's a perfect play. He slips the screen. He gets a dunk on a side pick and roll, and he pops. And he just completely didn't know the play. And so Ziegler and Barnes together, I thought we're going to put him in a headlock and throw him in a trash can. But it's stuff like that. You can't have it. You want to win games like this. You want to win games in this tournament. You can't have it. So I don't want to beat too much up on him, but he's a good player. And he's a difference maker when he is hitting threes and getting in there. Look, he's not the most physical guy, but you got to get in there and mix up, get some rebounds. You got to play like a 4-man. And sometimes you have to take on some, when you're playing Florida, you're just playing a bunch of just monsters. By the way, just a quick aside on Florida. I went in their locker room the other day, and this dude stood up, and I actually almost was so afraid I ran out of the locker room. The biggest human I've ever been around. 7'9", 305-pound Olivier Rioux.
Yeah.
Did you
7'9"?
Did you see him? He cut the nets yesterday without the ladder. Yeah, I'm sure everybody saw it. Yeah, the biggest dude I've ever seen. So that's what people have to look forward to next year when he starts playing. But anyway, Igor is the focal point for Tennessee. But like a year ago going to the tournament, remember, they were really struggling. They had Vescovy couldn't hit a shot, Gainey couldn't hit a shot, Ziegler couldn't hit a shot. They had Connect dominating, but they won that Texas game, swear, without hitting a single jump shot the entire night. I think in some ways, they are in better shape heading to this tournament than a year ago.
So on the Lipscomb front, they get matched up with Iowa State in the first round. So they're in Auburn's part of the bracket in the South region. Obviously, Iowa State going to be a tremendous challenge for Lipscomb. But, Joe, I was driving around this weekend. I saw the billboards up of Lipscomb being the ASUN champion. I'm rooting for them, and I'm hoping the Cinderella story this year is Lipscomb. Let's go, baby.
Well, I'm with you, even though I'm muting myself. I'll tell you what, they have a shot. Now, Obviously they've got a lot of shooting. Ognacevic, who, if I said his name right, is obviously a really good player. They've got the kind of guys who, they make enough shots that they can be scary. And Iowa State is very, very good. But Iowa State, of course, waits until they get seeded to announce that Keyshawn Gilbert is done. He's got like a groin thing. He's one of their, they're arguably their best player, but he's one of their best players, one of their big three players, and he's out for the tournament. And that's a big deal. That is a big deal for Iowa State. To me, it changes their ceiling a little bit in this tournament, and it makes them a little bit vulnerable. I mean, they're still like really good. This is it's a tough draw as a 13 seed. Your Lipscomb, as a 14 seed. Like, I still might rather play, like a Wisconsin, which is one of the other threes. I mean, I don't know, maybe even Kentucky, honestly, because they're so banged up. But there's a chance here. There's a chance Friday at 12:30 that Lipscomb could make that a really interesting game.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take your thoughts on the NCAA tournament and the brackets throughout the show today on the program. We will get back into that into both the 7 o'clock hour and the 8 o'clock hour as well. The Titans made a move over the weekend that I think it's fair to say surprised the heck out of me. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Brought to you by First Horizon, big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. We are taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe, a bit of a surprising move over the weekend for the Titans. Now, they had traded Kenneth Murray to Dallas, and we talked about that late last week. And then over the weekend, they release Chidobe Awuzie, leaving the Titans with $12.5 million in dead cap money heading into next year. So they got 1 year and I believe 8 games out of Awuzie after signing him to the free agency deal last summer, and in 1 year have decided to move on from him. I thought, look, obviously you wanted more availability from him, and we talked about that looking ahead to this year, right? Both with him and with Snead. Like, they got to have both of those guys on the field to feel good about that position and the depth that they supposedly have there. Well, apparently the Titans not waiting around on Awuzie. After 1 year and 8 games, he's gone, and they've moved on from him. You got Murray out. You got Awuzie out. I mean, apparently they weren't a big fan of what Rand Carthon did in free agency last year, and Chad Brinker's just sitting over there like, yeah, I mean, I don't know how any of this stuff came together. It's unbelievable.
He kept signing guys, and I wasn't looking. It was just very frustrating. Yeah, of course, Awuzie also has a history with Brian Callahan.
Yep.
Yeah, there's that. I guess, I mean, is it possible they're just like the medical information right now is like, it's heading the wrong direction,
Maybe.
you know? Because, or does this just mean that we got confirmation that Travis Hunter picked number 1?
Could be.
There you go. That's a, yeah, look, I'm surprised that is a dead cap hit. The cap, which is real. Someone trying to text me on the text line saying it's fake. Talk about the Bengals, which we can get into
we'll
later.
Get there in just a few minutes.
But it is surprising. I think it also probably is some comment on Jarvis Brownlee. Sort of, I guess the vision could be Brownlee, Snead. I guess Snead, right? He's going to play. Is he playing? Does he?
I guess.
Can he run? Can he walk? Can he play? We'll see. But
does he have 2 legs?
Yeah, you know, if he is able to, Brownlee, Snead, McCreary could be good. But yeah, obviously you look back and it certainly isn't like John Robinson level picking up hurt players, but Rand Carthon did sort of follow in those footsteps a little bit. But not Chad Brinker.
Yeah. Make sure we separate.
He was independent of that.
Look, on the surface, I guess I don't care that much, just because we talked about Awuzie last year, even heading into the year. We're like, he's got an injury history, and then the year comes around and he played 8 games. What did he end up with? 1 pick? Yeah, he had 1 pick last year and wasn't really all that impactful because he couldn't get on the field. And by the time he was on the field late in the year, Joe, the season was over at that point. So you just didn't see a whole lot of him last year, and he's about to be 30. So, like, the injury stuff, I mean, he played 8 games in 2020. He played 8 games in 2022. He played 8 games last year. Like, it feels like every other year he's missing half the year out there. Now, the year before he signed his deal, he played in 15, and that's part of why he was able to sign the deal, because he was out there and he was available, and the Titans took a chance on it. It just didn't work this year. And then I think the question you got to start asking yourself is, all right, well, now that he's approaching 30, is that going to get better? Like, is he just going to magically become available all the time now that he's in his 30s? So clearly the Titans felt like the answer to that was no, which is fine. Now, having said that, Joe, you went from a spot where, let's say for sake of argument, Awuzie was healthy and Snead was healthy, and you do have Brownlee and McCreary's there. Like, you got some good depth at corner.
You can absorb an injury.
And now he's gone. And, I mean, you're not totally devoid of depth there, but it's a big hit to your depth. So I guess my question is, does releasing Awuzie, is that going to affect how they approach this draft coming up? Not necessarily with the number 1 overall pick, but you are, I think, adding another potential need to a team that already has a lot of needs.
Right. Yeah, like this was the one position, like, okay, we don't mess with that too much unless you get Travis Hunter. Other than that, you don't mess with it. So now you have to mess with it. Or maybe it's a one of the, a free agent signing here soon. I mean, I think you have to do something, because like you said, if you're banged up, then you have guys who have injury histories, have more of them, not less of them, right? And another thing about this is, again, I know it's a short period of time, but there is no question that, and Brian Callahan talked about this before, and it's just obvious to see. Chidobe Awuzie is absolutely a guy you want in your locker room. I mean, he is, very much known as a leader and as a professional. And yeah, you're kind of losing a lot of guys like that at this point with some of the moves, which again, there's a lot more to consider, but that is something too when we talk about culture. So it's a little surprising. It is. And so like you said, now you have to deal with that. I mean, the draft, those picks are so scarce and valuable, especially if they're not moving out of one, that, man, I just where do you have time for a corner in there?
Well, and now, I think this was important anyway, but now I think there's even more importance put on L'Jarius Sneed being available.
Yes.
And, they seem to be confident that he will be. But, I mean, I don't know about you, and I don't know about most Titans fans, but my suspicion is that most of you all probably agree with me, and I'll believe that when I see it with Sneed. Get out there and get through camp and get through a few games and play multiple games in a row. And I'll be like, okay, well then I guess I'll allow myself to start to believe here. But based on all the noise around him after the trade last year, and then him just being a non-factor for the Titans last season, it's hard for me to believe that he's just magically going to be completely healthy all year this year.
Yeah, very hard. So that's the thing I just said. They must have information on Awuzie that makes them pessimistic about his health moving forward. Does this mean they have news about Sneed that, actually this rest has been huge and it's a totally different deal? I don't know.
I hope so.
Yeah. You hope that's part of it because, it's you've got to – I mean, this team has to have a viable fourth cornerback or third outside cornerback with him on your team. I understand. Then it's Chidobe didn't play much either. I get that. But now you have to go find another answer while you're looking for answers at linebacker, safety. I like the signing up front on defense and the offensive line, but there's still, there's a lot to deal with here, a lot to address.
Well, and look, last week they brought, Darrell Baker Jr. back in the fold. I think they were happy with what he brought to the table last year. So you've got Brownlee, you've got him again. Like I said, it's not like you're completely devoid of depth there, but you were counting on, at least clearly they weren't, but we were counting on Awuzie and Sneed being the answers there. And then if they go down, then you've got some other guys you can rely on. Now they need L'Jarius Sneed to be healthy throughout the course of this season.
Yeah, and Baker, look, this could be a comment on Baker.
Could be
too. So we'll see. I mean, yes, availability, as the text you're saying, prioritizing availability. I would agree with that. I think that's a clear theme here.
Absolutely.
And overall, I agree with that.
Yes. You're looking at the needs on this roster right now, and it's well, let's just make one more. All right, let's get in there.
Sure.
Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Larry to the program. Larry, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. How are y'all?
Good, Larry.
Good.
Hey, with Awuzie getting cut over the weekend, one of the things, we keep on hearing Travis Hunter. I'm not for surely sold they're going to draft Cam Ward at number one. Is Travis Hunter actually the best cornerback in this draft, or is he even the best receiver? I'll hang up and listen, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. I mean, Rexrode definitely believes he's the best corner in the draft. I think a lot of people believe
by far
he's the best cornerback in the draft. So, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily view releasing Awuzie as some commentary that they're going there. The signs are still pointing Cam Ward to me. If it's not going to be Cam Ward, your quarterback room is going to be rough heading into this year at this point.
Yes, I think it will be too. But yeah, I think Travis, Will Johnson from Michigan's a really good corner. There are some people as a corner, strictly as a corner, this guy or that guy is better than Travis Hunter. Again, I don't think so. I think Travis Hunter is going to be one of the great cornerbacks in NFL history. So how about that for a little Monday morning hyperbole? But I do. I think he's special. I don't think he's the best. Yeah, the best receiver in the draft. Who is the best receiver? I guess you could argue that he still has a case as that.
Yep.
It just
is Ted McMillan.
There's questions about all the other guys, but he's not a slam dunk to me like corner.
I'm wanting a certain receiver, Matthew Golden, the fall number 23.
Yes,
I've been
you
watching
are.
too much of him lately, so
Yeah,
I got to stop.
He's one of those, like what he did on top of what he did on the field last year. He's going to end up going like 12 or something, you know?
He's going to go really high. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, good. Look at that.
Yep.
615-737-1025. Titans have released Chidobe Awuzie. We'll take your thoughts on that. How will that affect what the Titans do in the draft? More coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Need a bracket to fill out for the NCAA men's tournament? Well, head to thegamenashville.com/game bracket and print off your bracket today. Presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by thenewcumberland.com, Twin Peaks, and Bet365. We will get back into the NCAA tournament and the bracket a little bit later in the program. Right now, taking your thoughts on the Titans and the releasing of Chidobe Awuzie over the weekend, 615-737-1025. And as we just heard in our little promo there, little live golf later in the program too. Rexrode's very fired up about it. Maybe we'll get a tally ho by the end of all this. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I don't know if I can do this show.
Can't contain yourself. I did
Once
have
we get this going.
I did have a friend text me earlier when we were talking about the NCAA tournament. It was like, wow, Rexrode's like a pig and bleep today. Really loving this stuff.
Oh man. I mean, you gotta love it, right? This is when the rest of the world joins the college basketball.
This is when I'm all in.
That's right. That's right.
All in, baby. So as far as the Titans in the draft, if you're going Cam Ward at number 1, we talked with TD on Friday about at 35, could you find a way to trade back from that and pick up more picks? Because there's still a lot of Titans fans that say, we need more picks. How do you find more picks? And I generally agree with that. I think they need as many picks as they can get. You're not going to get that king's ransom if you're not trading back at number 1, which it doesn't look like they are, by the way. And we'll get into the Cam Ward stuff a little bit later in the show too. But Jordan Raynon, who covers the Giants, was on a podcast this weekend and basically said, like, from things he's been hearing, that the Giants trading up to number 1 is like almost dead. So all signs continue to point to the Titans taking Cam Ward at number 1 overall. So if you do that, you currently do not have a 3rd round pick. You're picking at 35. Maybe you could trade back from 35 and pick up an extra pick somewhere along the way. But the bottom line is, if you're taking Cam Ward at number 1, obviously you're filling a huge need at quarterback there, but you're not going to have as many kicks at the can as you would at trading back and picking up other positions. Now, how does corner factor into this still? Like, Joe, if you're going purely by need, it's still down the list to me. Like, wide receiver is a massive need right now. Edge rusher, I think, is still a massive need. And even though they've addressed the offensive line in free agency, I still wouldn't hate them addressing more of the offensive line in the draft as well. So I would probably still put all of those ahead of cornerback if you're going strictly by need. But I do think, if with Awuzie now gone, if you roll around to pick 35 or pick 108 or whatever you end up getting, if you're trading back from 35 here and you roll around and a corner is the best player on the board, like, does that make you more apt to take one now that Awuzie's not there? I don't know. I'd be interested to see how they view that.
Yeah, I think especially, I mean, if you're going to top of the draft for need, which is what it is. I mean, there's just I can't buy that all of a sudden the Titans have fallen in love with Cam Ward so much that, hey, he's actually the top player on the board. No. I mean, that just doesn't add up with everything we've heard about these prospects. So if you're going to draft for need, and we understand that drafting at need for need at quarterback is different, but still, that's what you're doing, right? I don't think you can do any of your other picks on need. So if it is a corner, okay, well then do that. Even though you obviously still have to me a way more intense need for edge and receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, if you're going to do Cam Ward, you really need to stick with the best player approach for the rest of the draft. I mean, this roster obviously needs so much, and what it needs more than anything is it needs great players anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think you really have to emphasize that. So yeah, like it could be a corner, and I'm not right now off the top of my head. There's some good corners in the draft. There's a couple supposed to go in the first round. I'm not familiar if there's like necessarily supposed to be somebody around there, but I think there's definitely going to be edges and receivers.
The odds are there'll be more edges and receivers in that spot.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see how that part of it plays out. And we got a text that says corner's not a need. I don't know that I would classify it right now as a need either. I think it can very quickly become one. Yeah. Like if Snead can't go at any point this year, it's a big need all of a sudden, right? So like it's basically one injury away from being a need right now, and a pretty massive one if you're the Titans. So we'll see how they view that. I still think, what other move at receiver is coming? It's hard for me to believe that they're done at receiver in terms of the free agent part of this. Now, there's not a ton of great options out there as we've talked about, but I think just from a purely a body standpoint, you got to go sign somebody else at receiver to bring him in, and then you can continue to address it in the draft at that point. Robert from Nashville on the text line says, are we asking too much for the number 1 pick? Can this new GM just not swing a deal to move back? Does nobody want to give up anything for the talent available at number 1? Well, the answer could be as simple as they don't want to move back anymore, and they've discovered that Cam Ward's their guy, right?
That could be.
I mean, it's looking like, and again, we'll see how it actually plays out more than a month from now. So there's still a long way to go, but it's looking like it's trending towards the Titans selecting Cam Ward.
Right.
And if they love Cam Ward and they've determined that that's their guy, then as we talked about last week, if I'm the Titans, it doesn't really matter what anybody else offers you. If you think that that's your pick at quarterback, and as far as like, is anybody swinging? Is nobody giving up enough talent for the available picks at number 1? Like, you got the Giants still in need of a quarterback, and they're really the team that's been connected to it. Cleveland's probably not moving up 1 spot. So if they're not moving up for Cam Ward, they're not going to move up for Travis Hunter. Like, the idea that they were ever moving up for Hunter or Carter or anybody like that, you're moving up for the quarterback if you're doing that.
Yeah. I at this point, the Titans' maneuvering tells me they're probably taking him at 1. I still don't hate the idea of having an open mind and someone throwing the world at you. But again, who would that be? Probably the Giants.
Yeah.
So I think what it tells you is, 1, again, the Titans, what they've been doing, it's hard to take this as anything, but they're planning to take the quarterback at 1. And it also might speak to, well, Cam Ward, he may be the number 1 guy clearly, but he is rated as a prospect below most of the first-round quarterbacks of the past few years. That's just the reality. Doesn't mean that dooms him to a bust career, but that's just what it is. And so that kind of goes along with the lack of teams desperate to come up and get him, right?
Yeah. And look, the Giants, until they get a quarterback, maybe they do love Cam Ward and they're desperate to get him. But again, as we talked about, if the Titans really want Cam Ward, then if I'm the Titans, I don't care what the Giants are desperate to do. Like, if you want Cam Ward, then take Cam Ward.
Yeah, again,
you hold all the cards.
Unless the Giants, I want to give you, 3 firsts.
Right.
I mean, even a first, I think, would be a surprise. Like, if not obviously this year they'd be swapping first, but like next year's first, I think that would be a surprise. But if it gets to that or something, but at this point, all the momentum seems to be pointing to. I mean, who knows? I guess the Giants are in that Aaron Rodgers vortex right now.
We're going to get into that here in just a few minutes as to what in the world's going on the Rodgers front and how that's kind of holding up everything else at quarterback right now. Ed on the text line says the Titans have a huge void they must fill. The linguistics professor from Columbia needs another name that he can constantly correct his colleagues. So taking a shot at Kuharski this morning on the text line.
Does Kuharski have it right like we do or no?
I think he does.
Again,
I think so.
It does. He's leaving now. He's gone. So, but again, it's Chidobe Awuzie if you want to say it in English. Somebody told you. Chidobe Awuzie. We have people on this station who call him Chidobe Awuzie.
Yeah.
If you want to call him Chidobe Awuzie, then you need to say his first name in his dialect, which is like Chidobe Awuzie. Fine. Then do that. Otherwise, it's Chidobe Awuzie. Now I've become the linguist. I'm even more insufferable than Kuharski on it. Right. Thanks a lot, Ed.
615-737-1025. Our phone number. Some big news in the NFL in Cincinnati. Paydays for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We'll get into that. Also, we will get into the quarterback situation that is currently being held up by the caveman, Aaron Rodgers. We'll see if that ever has a resolution. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Corey Curtis from News 2 will be with us for his weekly visit at 8 o'clock. We'll get into all things Titans with him a little bit later in the show. Taking your thoughts right now, 615-737-1025. Joe, the saga is over in Cincinnati as it relates to Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. They both get long-term deals. Ja'Marr Chase becoming the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Jordan Schultz putting it out there last night. 4 years, $161 million, $112 million guaranteed. And I believe the AAV works out to where he's getting paid $40.25 million per year after Myles Garrett got paid 40. So when you throw it out there that we're going to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league, and then Myles Garrett, like 2 weeks later, gets his contract, it's like, oh, crap. Okay.
Yep.
So that worked out well for Ja'Marr Chase.
Goes up a little bit.
And then T. Higgins, 4 years, $115 million with the first 2 years guaranteed. I did find this hilarious, the way that Jordan Schultz phrased this, making him the highest paid wide receiver 2 in NFL history. That's coming directly from the agent there. So good stuff there. So T. Higgins, Ja'Marr Chase locked up. We'll see if they're able, Joe, to find an agreement and a long-term deal with Trey Hendrickson as well, who I guess is still being allowed to seek a trade. They've not found anything that's worked out on that front yet. But your reaction to the deals for Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins?
Yeah, well, good for the Bengals because we talk about the Bengals' cheapness a fair amount, and so they got some of this done. Also, they could have saved themselves money by getting stuff done earlier, but they didn't do it, so they end up paying more. This is – I mean, look, I would think that this would make Hendrickson tougher to do. Is it possible to do? Sure it is, because the cap is maneuverable. You can move things around. You can kick the can down the road, and you're going to have to make some other tough choices that aren't at the very top of your roster, which is, again, where the cap is real. So it's possible, but I guess I would think it's even more likely that Hendrickson moves on, which makes me worry about their defense. But, I mean, look, if you're Joe Burrow, you have to feel pretty happy knowing you got these guys. No more talk about this or that. You hope that that Higgins stays healthy. That's a big thing here. That's a big investment in a guy who has had some health injuries.
Yep.
But I think it just makes – I mean, look, you have this finite amount of time here with Joe Burrow, and I think you have to give him what he needs to be successful, and you have to figure out the other side of the ball. So we'll see if they end up signing Hendrickson. If they're able to keep him, then the Bengals are just – it's a new era. The Bengals not being the cheapest franchise in the NFL.
It is a new era from that standpoint. Now, as others have pointed out, and it's fair to bring up, I mean, you've paid Chase, you've paid Higgins. We'll see what ends up happening with Hendrickson. But let's say they get Hendrickson back in the fold somehow. It's like, well, that's great. You had all those guys last year, and you didn't make the playoffs. So there's now – I mean, not that there wasn't before after Burrow signed his deal, but now that you've paid these two guys especially, like there is an absolute ton of pressure on this team heading into this year. Like, if you're that owner, it's like, all right, I've paid you. You better not miss playoffs again. Like, don't miss the playoffs again. If you're Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins, I know that we can't sit here today and predict injuries. And by the way, Burrow's had some that you got to worry about as you move forward here. Higgins, as you brought up, has had some injury history the last couple of years. If I'm Mike Brown right now, I don't care about any of that. Like nope, we've done it. So you're going to be in the playoffs and you're going to be competing for a Super Bowl every year. And if you're not, people are going to get fired at the end of the year.
Yeah. And already, obviously moved on from what was not long ago, one of the most respected D coordinators in the league. So yeah, a lot of pressure for sure. But I'll give you the Bengals when it comes down to it. You have some great players and you have some things that have delivered winning at a high level. You have to keep it. You have to. I mean, they're still in their primes, and like it's crazy to, even though it's been disappointing, it's crazy to me to blow that up and move on from it. It is when they're all working together. Again, when I'm talking about the passing game, it's spectacular, and it can be a difference maker for you. And so, I mean, good for them. I think ultimately, like, that's what you have to do. And then you have to draft well, and sometimes you have to get luck. And you know how it goes. Like, you lose a couple close games in a season sometimes, and it goes the wrong way. And sometimes you get a nice fast start, and they could be right. I mean, I think that depending on how the rest of the offseason goes, I think they can be right there as a dangerous team in the AFC next year.
No, I think so too. Look, it's stunning to me that Joe Burrow was completely healthy all of last year, and they did make the playoffs. Like, I understand when he's out and he's missing games that you just don't have a shot after that. But when he played in every game last year and you can't make the playoffs,
and had insane.
And by the way, it
numbers,
was really good.
like
that's the
MVP
thing.
numbers.
Yeah, it was really good, and you couldn't make the playoffs. Like, that's a huge problem. So, they did lose a lot of close games, and maybe it's as simple as you got these guys in the fold. There's some security there. Maybe people relax a little bit, and they're able to go play, and they fix whatever issues they had on the defensive side of the ball. But there is a lot of pressure on that trio, especially. Like, you better be putting up some points and some numbers and winning some games. And, Burrow, they missed the playoffs 2 years in a row. And that, I get the first year he was hurt for the majority of it. So you can make that excuse, but there's no reason for that team to miss the playoffs again.
Right. And so the pressure's high. And as much as they are good and capable, look at the rest of their division.
Exactly.
Look at the rest of this conference. It's, it's not going to be easy. There's no doubt about that. Again, they got to, that's the thing, like close games and all that, but the defensive numbers were terrible, despite
really
having
bad.
this guy that is one of the best pass rushers in the league. I mean, that's a lot of revamping needed.
Well, and they're in a good division, and that's without knowing at the moment who's going to play quarterback for Pittsburgh.
Right.
And we'll get into that coming up next. One guy kind of holding things up at the quarterback spot right now, and some very interesting reporting to that front over the weekend as well. We'll get into all that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Preds fans, don't miss Smashville Live this Wednesday night at Brewhouse South in Franklin at 6 o'clock. You can see your Preds star players up close and personal, autographs and pictures available as well. This Wednesday's guest will be Jonathan Marchessault. That's this Wednesday night at Brewhouse South in Franklin. Preds back in action tomorrow night at home, taking on the St. Louis Blues. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. So Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase get their paydays. And, Joe, we're still waiting on a resolution on the Aaron Rodgers front. No decision made on that front yet. He's still out there. Pittsburgh doesn't have a quarterback at the moment. Russell Wilson waiting in the wings as well.
Aaron Rodgers backup, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's
like,
his
we'll
free
see what
agency
Aaron does.
backup. Yeah.
So apparently Kevin O'Connell's playing a big part in this as well. Now, The Athletic put this out there over the weekend, and Diana Rossini and Michael Silver, and I believe Alec Lewis was the third one.
Yeah,
who kind of worked together on this story. And says, I'll read the opening line. 3 days after becoming a free agent, Aaron Rodgers remains a quarterback without a team. As the four-time MVP ponders his next move, one thing's become clear. The person who currently holds the biggest sway over his playing future is Minnesota Vikings coach Kevin O'Connell. So it sounds like, Joe, there's some pretty strong interest on the Rodgers side of this, of playing in Minnesota. And that doesn't really surprise me when you look at Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and a team that won 14 games last year in the NFC. We've talked about it. Like, if you're picking between the two conferences, NFC is probably the way to go if you want to go play quarterback somewhere. And they've got a lot of talent. Now, it's hilarious because that would be following the Brett Favre playbook to a T, going from the Packers to the Jets and then the Vikings. So
yeah,
could be awesome to see the way that plays out. But apparently there's a waiting game going on to seeing if he ends up in Minnesota. And if he doesn't, there's the idea thrown out there that he may not want to play for Pittsburgh or the Giants or whoever else, and he could retire if it's not the Vikings. So what do you make of where things currently stand with Aaron Rodgers, who at the moment at quarterback is holding up everything else?
Wait, first of all, help my old brain out. Favre went Jets, then Vikings?
That is correct.
Okay, in my brain I had that mixed up. Yeah, it's I find it really weird from the Minnesota perspective, frankly. I just, like, if I don't know, man, it just seems like Rodgers is obviously a completely different thing. I understand that they had a veteran with O'Connell and Cousins, and it worked out well. But Kirk Cousins is in many ways like the opposite of Aaron Rodgers in terms of like distraction, locker room presence, maturity, selflessness, not doing hallucinogens constantly. I find it very strange that Minnesota really just says, yeah, Sam, thanks for the 14 wins, but bye. And then wants to bring in Rodgers. I understand you could look at Aaron Rodgers and still say, yeah, he's still a better player than Sam Darnold. You could make the case for that, but I think it's pretty close at this point. And so, like, if I don't know, I guess I'm a little bit confused as to the entire strategy there. And now again, it's all JJ. JJ's a guy. Love JJ. He's going to be a star. He would have taken over the job last year. Now it's like, yeah, how about Aaron Rodgers for a year? I find that to be very weird, but apparently it's real.
Yeah, I mean, apparently it's like, based on this piece at The Athletic, it's basically like Rodgers is waiting on Kevin O'Connell to make a decision. Like, that's kind of what it feels like. Is he's made it clear that that's where he wants to play, and he wants to be in Minnesota, and he's waiting on Kevin O'Connell to, I guess, determine if he wants him or not. Like, it's weird from a couple of different standpoints. It's like, we keep hearing out of Minnesota, man, they're in love with JJ McCarthy, and they think that he's ready to go. It's like, okay, well, is he ready to go? Or is he not? Like,
Yeah, if you're him, it's like, all right, it's my job.
Yeah.
Who? Aaron Rodgers coming in?
Right.
No, not who. Who's that?
Now, again, like, it's not like Rodgers would be the long-term answer there. It's at least a year, though. And if things go well, it could be 2, right? So if you're the Darnold thing was one thing. Darnold's 27, and look, there were people that before he had an absolute crap end of his season with the two stinkers at the end of the year, we're talking about, man, they should trade J.J. McCarthy and just make Sam Darnold their long-term quarterback. You're not going to do that with Rodgers, obviously, but on a one-year deal with him coming in, like where would they rank in the NFC? I don't know. I mean, obviously Philadelphia's at 1. Detroit's not going anywhere. They're pretty good. You got Washington on the upswing. So there's some good teams that are already established in the NFC. What does Rodgers change the equation with Minnesota all that much from what they were last year?
No. I mean, to me, go with your young guy, and you maybe take a step back this year. But he's playing, and now you're finding out, is he one of those guys? With Rodgers, I'll put this, I'll put some money on this if somebody wants to bet me. They will not win 14 games with Aaron Rodgers as quarterback next year. So he could even be a little better than Darnold was this year. I'd have my questions about that too, but they won't win 14 games.
I don't think they
won't win their division.
The question is, will they win playoff games? Like, that's what it boils down to. And that's what you're making your decision on if you're Kevin O'Connell. Now, here's one part of this thing that I don't know that I believe. Like, I don't think Rodgers is just going to up and retire if Minnesota says no. I could be wrong about that. But to me, like, he basically begged the Jets, according to reporting, to keep him around, and then they decided not to. He's waiting on Minnesota. The threatening to retire thing kind of seems like he's trying to put some pressure on Minnesota to get it done. I would be surprised if Minnesota tells him no, and he just looks around and says, all right, I'm done. I'm not going to play for Pittsburgh. I could be wrong about that. I would just be surprised.
I would too. I mean, look, I feel like the Pittsburgh thing, in a way, if I'm Rodgers, I'd be more attracted to that just because I know it's a tougher, obviously, it's not necessarily a tougher division, but it's a tougher conference for sure.
Yep.
But in Pittsburgh, like, they don't have the answer waiting there, Like, if you play well, then you really could be looking at 2 years. I just can't see in Minnesota this idea, especially that, and they're going to make JJ wait another year after this year. I can't buy that at all. Pittsburgh doesn't have anybody. They don't have an answer behind him. There's not he has a crappy game and everybody's like, put the freaking rookie in already. They don't have that.
No disrespect to Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, well, that's right. There are some Steelers fans here who still believe, man, it should have been Mason all along. Yep. Should have been Mason. So I'm with you. I guess I understand how Minnesota is more attractive. I
don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Minnesota is a more attractive destination. But
TK Metcalf and Pickens also, you're right, though, as you talked about last week, Rodgers and Pickens, that could be volatile. Whereas Rodgers going to Minnesota and having Jefferson and Addison, you're like, yep, we'll work with this. This will work out just great. So I get that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think this ends his career if Minnesota doesn't work out. And if it does work out, I'm really a little confused by the Vikings. And I'd love to know what J.J. McCarthy thinks behind closed doors about that.
I would too. Now, look, again, as we talked about, I think the conversation of Rodgers being washed has been a little overblown this offseason. His numbers last year are pretty good. So, I mean, they weren't MVP elite level, but they were pretty good. Now, having said that, his numbers were pretty good and the Jets were terrible. So what does that mean? I have no idea. So at age 41, are they is he having a bounce back next year? Or at age 41, is he just going to continue to slide? Now, his weapons will be better, although he did have Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson in New York.
It's not bad. And how many games last year? Because really, I didn't watch a lot of Jets. What I watched would be like end of game situations. And I mean, I think I can recall 3 instances where like his late game drive to tie or win fell short.
Yeah.
Not all him, but he didn't get it done. Yeah, I wouldn't bet on him getting any better. And he has gotten worse.
Well, it's very interesting that we're now a week removed. So this time a week ago, the legal tampering period opened up. And that night, last Monday night, Mike Florio put out a piece at Pro Football Talk talking about how basically a deal could be done the next day between Rodgers and the Steelers. And we have now gone from like an imminent signing with the Steelers. And I don't doubt Florio's reporting. Like, it was probably pretty close. But we've now gone from an imminent signing with the Steelers to a week later, still no resolution. And apparently he's waiting on the Vikings. But this is what he does. Like, this is, we can say whether or not it's intentional or not, but all eyes are on him right now, waiting on him to make a decision on what to do. And here we are dragging things out.
Yep. He as much the NFL loves to be at the top of the news cycle, and he loves to be at the top of that news cycle. And it's pretty neat trick at this age.
It is. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. We'll take more of your thoughts on the Aaron Rodgers situation. We will get back into the NCAA tournament and the path for Tennessee and Vanderbilt coming up next as well. The Rob rant coming up at 7:45. And then Corey Curtis will be with us at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Corey Curtis from News 2 will be with us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into all things Titans with him, so looking forward to that. Joe, the bracket is out. We went through the path for Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Lipscomb, by the way, a little bit earlier in the show. It is interesting. So Tennessee ends up as a 2 seed in Lexington, which you will be there. You will be covering the Lexington part of the opening round here of the NCAA tournament. Vanderbilt in the East bracket matched up with St. Mary's in the 7-10 matchup in the first round. They could get Alabama in round 2 if they're able to take down St. Mary's. So an interesting break there for Vanderbilt. I'm looking at the path here for Tennessee. We'll get back to the Vanderbilt part of it here shortly. So you've got Houston as the 1 in that bracket. You've got Kentucky as the 3, which you could eventually end up with a Sweet 16 matchup of Kentucky and Tennessee if they both take care of business before then. Look, I think it's a navigable bracket for Tennessee. You've got obviously Wofford, who I think they're, last time I checked, like a 20-point favorite over in the opening round. The winner of UCLA and Utah State after that, which could get tricky for Tennessee, but we'll see. And then if it is Kentucky, Kentucky has had a lot of success against Tennessee so far this year. They've beaten them twice. It is very difficult to beat a team 3 times in one season. And as you mentioned, Kentucky is banged up. Now, Illinois could have something to say about that. Tennessee and Illinois have played this year. Tennessee won on the road at Illinois. So some familiar opponents could be shaping up for Tennessee the deeper they get into this thing, really any way you squeeze it here. I mean, Purdue is in their bracket, and obviously they're a different team than they were a year ago. But it's an interesting draw for Tennessee. A lot of teams that they've either seen this season or seen in recent memory in the postseason that make up for some interesting rematches there.
Well, and you got let's not forget Rick Barnes and the UCLA flirtation. Now
true.
it's a few years ago now. Gosh, I guess are we going back 6 years? Is that right? I think we are.
I think so, yeah.
Now, but this is, I mean, Mick Cronin is there. Backup plan. So Rick Barnes, the head coach of and boy, is he fun.
He's an interesting guy.
It's one of the most things I'm most looking forward to about Lexington is just hopefully, basically I hope they lose just so I can hear Mick Cronin absolutely melt down and call his players losers after the game.
These guys don't care about anything.
Oh, man.
They suck.
But so that you got that aspect of it. Yeah, look, UCLA is very talented. And they got big-time size in the post. So, I mean, that could be a tricky game for sure. Utah State's a good 10. If you get to that, you get to that second weekend in Indy. Kentucky, it's really interesting with Kentucky because, first of all, Jackson Robinson out, which is terrible for them. And now Lamont Butler just keeps banging up his shoulder. So Mark Pope is saying, positive things about it, but we'll see. You take him out of there. They're just a totally different team. You saw it against Alabama. They got their freshmen out there. They don't have enough bodies. Kentucky, Rick Barnes has kind of owned Kentucky with John Calipari coaching. He's had success. And so, I think some of that is just like they're deep defensively. They match up with them. What Kentucky does on offense this year is completely different with their 5-out offense. And it gave Tennessee problems. They shot crazy well too. I would like Tennessee in that rematch, especially with their injuries. Now I'm here for the rematch. I mean, that those two teams playing in the Sweet 16 in Indy would be a blast. But Illinois is also very dangerous as a 6. And Illinois, of course, lost a thriller to Tennessee in their home gym earlier this year when I thought Illinois might be like a top 10 kind of team this year, but they have that kind of talent. So it won't be easy to get all the way to the other side of things in Indy. If they do, I absolutely think Houston will be there. I don't see any resistance for Houston. And for people who, I think there's a lot of skepticism about Houston every year in this tournament, and I get why, because what they do is they play amazing defense, and then they go 3 from 20 from 3 in a game and lose. They're one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country this year. Like St. John's might be this year's Houston, which is incredible defense. But yeah, they're prone to some bad shooting, and I just we'll see. I mean, I'd love to see St. John's and Florida matchup, but Houston is a national championship contender. Tennessee, Houston is what I expect to happen in that bracket, and it would be an incredible game. First of all, I think that basically the top two of the top three, along with St. John's, defensive teams in the country. That Tennessee could win that game. I like Tennessee's chances to beat Houston this year in Indy better than last year in Detroit beating Zach Edey and Purdue. And they almost did.
They did. St. John's, it's interesting. Rick Pitino's had some interesting quotes this year on what watching them shoot the ball makes him want to do to himself. It's interesting to watch. By the way, could get Rick Pitino versus Coach Cal in round 2, potentially, if Arkansas takes down Kansas.
Yes, I am.
It's a big if.
Man, it is a big if. Oh, first of all, that's 3 of there's only like 5 coaches or something like that in this tournament who have won a championship, 5 or 6, I think, including our senior assistant executive producer Tom Izzo.
Yes,
and three of them are in one pod, Self, Calipari, and Pitino. But yes, I really want Calipari to win that game. I think they should win that game. Arkansas over Kansas in 10-7, and then St. John's, Arkansas is a banger if we can get it second round.
What do you make of Vanderbilt's first round matchup against St. Mary's?
Yeah, St. Mary's is one of the best defensive teams. Like they always are. They're slow. They're big, physical. They're sound. I mean, they have a brand, and they're tough to play against, man. I mean, I know Gonzaga finally got them, in the WCC title game, but they swept them in the regular season, and they're just a really, really sound, good team. So that's not the stuff. Vandy would like to play more up and down, and Vandy, the one thing that St. Mary's has that size inside that can bother Vandy, and so they're going to have to deal with that. But Vanderbilt, I think, is a better team, and I think if Vanderbilt can kind of rediscover how they were playing, I mean, basically a month ago, with this extra time off, get kind of a reset, get the heck away from the SEC. I think they got a really good chance to win it. Unfortunately for them, you win it, and then, hey, here's Alabama. Enjoy that. I think they only played them one time this year, right?
I believe that's correct.
And lost down there.
Yeah, it could be an interesting. Like if Vanderbilt wins against St. Mary's, you got Alabama taking on Robert Morris, so you immediately have another SEC matchup there. But that's what happens, Joe, when you get 14 teams in, right? Like we talked about it to begin the show. 14 teams in from the SEC, which is a record. Which, barring conference expansion, it's going to be tough to match that. Or not conference expansion, NCAA tournament expansion. It's going to be tough to match that at some point here. So you brought it up. They're in. You got 14 teams in the SEC, and now can you follow through with some big-time tournament performances and deliver on the biggest stage?
Right. As I laid it out, I wrote a column about this today in The Athletic, and I laid it out. All you got to do, get half those teams to Sweet 16, get 3 to the Elite Eight, get 2 to the Final Four, win the national championship. You do that, and you back up the greatest conference ever talk, and that's it. We will remember that forever, that this SEC was the greatest ever. Right now, it's the greatest going into a tournament. And, again, like I mentioned, the ACC of 84, Jordan's Carolina, Len Bias in Maryland, Danny Young and Muggsy Bogues and Wake Forest. Duke had Billis and they had a very disappointing tournament. This is, what this SEC needs to do is what the Big East did the next year, which is the only time we've ever seen a league have 3 teams in the Final Four: St. John's, Chris Mullen, Patrick Ewing, Georgetown, and then Villanova, which shocked everybody and beat Georgetown in the final game.
So outside of the top 4 teams in the SEC, so taking Auburn and Florida and Alabama and Tennessee out of it, and I'd probably even include Kentucky in there too. Is there a team in the SEC that you feel like could make kind of a dark horse run here, whether it's Missouri or Vanderbilt or Ole Miss or Georgia as a 9? Like, is there a team that you feel like maybe could surprise some people that go on a deep run?
Well, I think you mentioned Ole Miss. The problem is, as you look at these things, it's like you look at these things and it's like, yeah, I mean, I think Vanderbilt could be a surprise, but that's at the expense of Alabama. The problem is they're gonna still like run into each other here. But I look at Missouri, I look at Ole Miss, Iowa State. First of all, Lipscomb. It's Keyshawn Gilbert out for Iowa State for this tournament. It's a big deal. So I think Lipscomb, if they have a magical shooting day, that's an interesting first game. But if it's Iowa State, Ole Miss would have to be either Carolina or San Diego State. I like them to do that. I like them to beat Iowa State. And then you put them in the Sweet 16. That would probably be against Michigan State. I mean, your best bet of getting an Izzo team is the first game of weekend as opposed to the second game. They're really good on the short turnaround. So Ole Miss is, I think, it's certainly a Sweet 16 possibility, and they could give Michigan State trouble. And then I look at Missouri. Missouri is a really good team. Missouri Texas Tech, a 6-3 game would be as good a second round game as you might be able to have. Texas Tech's really good, but Missouri, Mark Mitchell, another banged up team, another banged up player. If he's okay, they got a real chance. And then you get into, like a Missouri St. John's Sweet 16 game. Again, St. John's at some point, I just worry about a shooting clunker from them and someone could get them. So there's a couple. Those sixes could do something.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll have the Rob Rant coming up next. Corey Curtis from News 2 will be with us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into all things Titans with him. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
Dennis says this show is like a fiesta in his ears. That's what we're here for.
Hey, there we go.
That's what we're here for.
But I mean, getting a defensive rebound against Florida is like me trying to button like that hard button, when I've been especially drinking too many Guinnesses and I have to go to a wedding or something.
Okay, well, unlearn that. Let's start repeating things and using big vocabulary words. Where's a thesaurus? Which is about as exciting as me walking out into traffic out there. So I understand that. It is that time of the day. Time for the Rob Rant here on Robby and Rexrode. Either the Rob Rant or the Rex Rant. Haven't had nicked off in years. I don't know the last time we had it.
He's a happy lad.
Very happy guy in there.
Not going to be happy when I punch him in the face when he's not wearing green on St. Patrick's Day. That's what you do, right? Punch him in the face?
I think that's what it's turned into, yeah.
I mean, St. Patrick's Day to me, it should not be a pinch. It should be a punch in the face.
I invite someone to do that to me today.
That's why I said I didn't do it to Nick.
Be careful now.
I know you're a hockey player.
Yeah,
I got
a little rough in there.
Yeah, pull the sweatshirt over the
Yeah.
over the
Put
head.
a little topper toozy on you.
There you go.
Well, watch out for that guy.
Maybe not him.
My goodness.
Matt Rimpe.
All right. There you go. So there's been a little bit too much positivity on the college basketball front today, so I'm here to pour some cold water on it.
Let's do it.
The officiating's got to get better. The officiating's got to get better in college basketball. And Joe, while I'm saying this, I realize, and you can tell me whether or not you agree or disagree with this. I would argue that basketball probably the most difficult sport to officiate. And I think the most difficult sport to officiate from a couple of different standpoints. Number one, it's moving really fast. Number two, you got some gigantic people all in a confined, closed space. And sometimes it's tough to see, like, what's a foul, what's not a foul, where did the ball last bounce off somebody's elbow. So I get it. There are going to be some missed calls that happen in college basketball. I thought the second half of the Tennessee-Auburn game, there's just way too many missed calls, and you got to be better about that. Like, there was a call on Okpara toward the end there, where it basically, like, they're both going up for a rebound, and all he did was swat the ball back out, and he got his fifth foul of the game called there. And, like, Jay Billis was going nuts on the broadcast. He's like, this is terrible. Like, you got to be better than this. It's a terrible officiated half here. And he was going nuts about that. And then they miss another call like 2 seconds later of a ball going off of they called off Tennessee for Auburn's ball, and it was off Auburn. Like, I get it. There's replay systems now. Quite frankly, I don't want the last 2 minutes of every basketball game to be, 5 minutes of replay back and forth. We got to get a little bit better on the college basketball officiating front here. And I get it. Like, it's hard. I said it. It's the hardest sport, I think, of all of them to officiate. I don't feel like we have as big of officiating problems in the NBA. It's still pretty difficult to officiate, and I feel like they found a way to do a pretty good job of it, and it's pretty bad in college basketball. We got to find a way to fix it.
I don't disagree. I do think that game in particular in that half was rough. I think, like yesterday, I think they did a really good job in that game. There were some missed calls. You're always going to have missed calls. Of course you are. But for the most part, I think it was pretty consistent, and I didn't have a huge issue. I think in the game you mentioned, I did. I think there are some officials who just aren't very good in the SEC. Pat Adams gets a primary, game. I mean, I don't think he's one of the best officials in college basketball. But look, the answer is, again, you mentioned the NBA, or you can look at the NFL versus college football. And I understand we can complain about NFL officiating too, but you have to pay these people. You have to invest in these people. We have to, in college basketball in particular, we have to make it so that these guys are not traveling all over the country to make as much money as possible during the season, which is what they do. Some of these, really good officials, various leagues want them. So they don't just work for one league. They go to different leagues, and they'll work they'll work 6 or 7 days a week. Think about the travel, think about the wear and tear. And it's not easy. It's hard. And so what you have is you have tired officials who are trying to make as much money as possible during the year. Well, that's not what it should be. They should be paid enough so that they work a regular work schedule and don't have to travel all over the place. And this is why it should be, to me, coordinated at the top of the sport, not just league by league. And there's a lot of money. and I know more is going to players and all that stuff, you have to invest in officials. People who are trying to fix games, gambling, all that stuff, where do you look? You look at officials. It's the easiest place. You can talk about players shaving points, all that stuff, but the easiest place to look is an official who can, a couple of calls can change the outcome of a game.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it's never going to be perfect, but I just feel like there's got to be a way down the stretch here. Like it feels like there's going to be some games here in the tournament that get decided by poor officiating, and that's what you don't want to see when the time this tournament comes around here. I feel like we have this conversation in college football too, right? Like this has almost turned into a perma rant on like the officials getting paid here, but I feel like there's a drop off that's more steep from the NBA to college basketball. Like college football's got some bad refs. The NFL has got some bad officiating that goes on. Like the NBA is not perfect, but I feel like there is a bigger drop off in quality of officiating from the NBA to college basketball than there is from the NFL to college football.
No, I think that's a good point. I watch NBA games, and I just, people miss calls, but I feel like there's a kind of consistency and an expectation. I rarely watch an NBA game and feel like, like I have no idea what they're doing. Like I think in college basketball, and we saw it some this weekend, sometimes you'll get a half where everything is allowed to go, and then the next half it's like they're also
complete opposite. Yeah.
I think that you have to set a tone for what you're allowing, what you aren't allowing, and then you stick with it the whole game. And I think it changes way too often half to half. And I think in the NBA, I think it's pretty consistent. Like they kind of understand the expectations there.
Well, and look, I know the NBA is 48 minutes, college basketball is 40. So you've not got as much game time. But the extra foul in the NBA is a big deal. Like having 6 fouls as opposed to 5 is a big deal. And we see it. Like as soon as you get 2 in the first half, but particularly on a star player, there's a little bit of panic that sits in. And you got your star players on the bench. Like Ziegler gets 2 fouls in the first half and he immediately goes to the bench. And it sounds like it's 1 extra foul. What difference does it make? That can make a huge difference throughout the course of a game.
Yeah, it's a big debate. Like some people say, well, there's 8 more minutes, so how would you do that? But I'm not opposed to a 6 foul in college basketball because I think that you're going to have way more time on the floor for the best players. Too many coaches, including senior, associate, junior, executive producer Tom Izzo, just auto bench good players when they get that second foul, and that's that. So then you have 12 minutes of like a great player not playing in the game, which is not good for the product. So we got a lot of things to fix, man.
We do.
And and again, I think this is going to be the last year of the reviews being like this. I think we're going to go to a challenge system next year. I think that's a big push, and we need it. Because when this NCAA tournament's about to start, now you get the longer commercials, or just wait for some of these game times.
It's going to be ridiculous. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Corey Curtis from News 2 will be with us coming up next. We'll get into the Titans and NFL free agency with him. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Monday morning. And as we do every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in our friend Corey Curtis from News 2, brought to you by Tennessee Men's Clinic. Corey, good morning. How are you?
I'm delightful. How are you today?
Also delightful. Appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning. Lots to get into with you on the Titans front here. Let's start with Chidobe Awuzie.
Okay.
So he was released over the weekend, has not been healthy throughout a lot of his career. We were going through some of his numbers earlier. It feels like every other year he basically misses half the season. So obviously did not go to plan for him and the Titans last year. What did you make of that move to move on from him? And where do you make of where the Titans are now left at the cornerback spot?
Well, that was one I had circled, and I know it caught some people by surprise, but I kind of expected it. So I was not surprised to see that move happen at all. If you notice, a lot of these moves they've made have been, their durability is an issue. Availability is an issue with, a lot of the players they've signed, like Draymond Jones has not missed a game in 2 years. What's that?
I'm screaming at a golf game. Sorry.
I'm listening,
okay.
Corey. We got some golf going on here.
Okay.
You're not watching this? The whole world is watching this.
I just woke up, guys. Some of us work at night.
That's true.
Yes. So durability is an issue. It saves them like $2 million this year, but it also tags them off the book last year. And, I think Jarvis Brownlee, you're talking about building your draft picks, coaching them up and retaining them. I mean, that's the guy that you want to do that with. So you want him on the field. Yes, it costs them in depth some, but if you remember, they just re-signed Baker, who played a lot last year, and I really liked him. I mean,
I did too.
I think he's an affordable, good depth piece. He's a good guy. He's long. So, I mean, I think they've got some good young players there where having Awuzie, frankly, just didn't make a lot of sense because of the cap hit and because of the lack of being able to count on him to be healthy. I mean, you just get to that point where where you can't expect to have guys around. It's tough to build around guys that you can't expect to have.
Yeah, I think clearly the durability aspect is a theme here, Corey. But I would wonder this also. Do you think this move speaks to optimism about L'Jarius Sneed? Because you can certainly see where even with Baker in the fold, when you have two guys like that you wonder about, that's why you keep both, because you figure one of them might be hurt, right? Like, am I taking that too far and wondering if this is a comment on optimism with him?
I mean, I know there was optimism on how healthy he was, but I mean, this is a guy who came into last year, I'm talking about Sneed, with a bad knee, and then, he suffers the quad injury of a lifetime that just did not get better. So I don't think so. I think this is just purely looking at his contract and seeing it at an escapable point and saying we're moving on. Because I don't think that they're a Sneed or a Awuzie away from being good. And they proved they could play defense with Brownlee, McCreary, and Baker back there anyway.
So, Corey, based on what they've done to this point, or maybe more accurately, what they've not done specifically at quarterback, is it looking like Cam Ward is the obvious pick to you now for the Titans? And if so, what do you make of the job that they've done in revamping the offensive line for him?
Well, there's also the reports last night that the Giants are out of the market for trying to trade for the first pick. So
right.
all signs seem to point to, Cam Ward being a Tennessee Titan, at number one. And, when they also signed Brandon Allen, who's 32 years old and has 1,800 career yards, which is fewer than Will Levis passed for last season. it let you know that somebody else was going to be playing quarterback for them this year. And, whether they have a secret plan to get somebody else, it certainly looks like it's Cam Ward. And, for me, no matter who the quarterback is, you need a better offensive line. But I am a huge proponent of when you have a rookie quarterback of making their job as easy as possible until they're ready to take on more. Because I always point back to Brady and Roethlisberger and their first year or two, they didn't throw more than 20, 25 passes a game. I mean, those guys didn't come in chucking it. They ran the football, and, the Titans have two good running backs, and they've got a large offensive line now that is, about 700 pounds on the right side. And I think those two guys, Pollard and Spears, should have a big year. And they should have the opportunity to have a big year, and they should set up, to make Cam Ward's job as easy as possible. I was in Houston the year David Carr came in as a rookie, and that's about as poor of a job as I've ever seen handling a franchise rookie quarterback, because he did have ability, and they just got him absolutely killed. It's tough for veterans to play when they're getting killed. Just, ask Patrick Mahomes in the 2 Super Bowls that he lost, how those games went for him. And so, I think protecting your young quarterback, allowing them to develop, and running the football until he's ready to throw it. I mean, and maybe he is Jaden Daniels and he's ready to throw it 30 times a game. But I like the idea of being able to not have to do that right out of the gate. So if you ask me what's more important, to have a line in front of him or to have star receivers around him at this stage in his career, it's definitely having the big guys in front of him.
76 freaking sacks, right? Is that the number that year for Carr? 76? I think
it was.
And I'll tell you what was the name of the coach? Tom Capers. And
right.
just kept dropping. I covered the first year of the Panthers and the first year of the Texans, so I got an overdose on Tom Capers. But it just kept dropping him back there, and you talk about a guy's head being on a swivel. Wow. So if you think the Titans' offensive line has been bad the last couple years, you have no idea.
And
that's saying something.
That is really saying something.
It is.
Okay, 2%.
Go ahead.
Sorry, 2 percentages I need from you. One.
Oh, sure.
I mean, we're already talking about Cam Ward, like it's a foregone conclusion he's the quarterback next year, but your percentage chance of confidence that he will start for the Titans week 1 next year, and then also your percentage confidence that he will be what they hope he is as a quarterback.
I would say 90% that he's going to start week 1. Just because if they brought in a Flacco or a Winston or a Gardner Minshew, some guy who'd started a lot of games, I would say, okay, maybe 50-50. But Brandon Allen doesn't tell me, hey, we're bringing this guy in to start week 1. Like I said, 1,800 career yards. Maybe I'm wrong. That's why I'll give it the 10%. And Cam Ward, I like him. I like his tape. I like the person. Is from what I know of the person, because I haven't met him. But his story, what he puts out there as to what's important to him, and the way he's been able to be successful in multiple stops. I like all those things. So, normally with a quarterback, I would say 50-50. I'll say 66.6667%. I'll say 2 to 1.
I like it. So
boy, that is very optimistic.
I like it. So on the NCAA tournament front, Corey, what do you make of Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and the opportunity in front of them as March Madness begins later this week?
Well, how about 14 SEC teams?
Yeah, crazy.
I mean, this is a league that a few years ago only had 12 teams, and also had to have a meeting with all its ADs to tell them to get their basketball together because they got to a point where they were lucky to get 4 or 5 teams in the tournament. So the league has certainly turned things around. Like everybody in that league that is in that tournament is prepared to play in that tournament. And so, you know, they're going to win some games, but they're also going to, I don't know how many have to play. How many potential SEC matchups do we have in round 2 other than Vanderbilt, Alabama? There's got to be more than one.
Yeah, there's also well, I thought it was Ole Miss, but I'm wrong about that. There's at least one other one that I saw, and right now I'm like, yeah.
Tennessee, Kentucky would be Sweet 16, right?
That is correct, which could be awesome.
Okay. Yeah. Do we? I don't know if we expect it to happen, but we'll see. You know, look, if Vanderbilt shoots the ball well, they've got a chance to move on. I think Alabama's a tough go in round 2. And for Tennessee, it's the same story. Every year, they're always going to play good defense, but every year they're going to have a clunker on offense. You know, they had that clunker on offense yesterday, and they lost. And can they survive the clunker on offense, whether it happens in round 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, or 5? Because there isn't a team in the field that they can't beat. I mean, they proved that at the SEC tournament. They beat Auburn. But when Igor Milicic and Chaz Lanier, and I know Lanier wound up with 11, but they didn't get anything from those guys in the first half, and so they struggled. And you know, can they survive those games where those guys, or you know, pick somebody else, you know, doesn't give them anything? I mean, if they didn't have Jordan Gainey yesterday, they would have been in real trouble. And so that'll be interesting to see because, you know, look, they're certainly good enough to go to the Final Four, but their history tells us there's going to be a game where they're going to struggle. I think Lipscomb, I know you didn't ask me, is interesting.
Yep.
Because Iowa State's, I believe their best player is hurt.
Yep.
And Lipscomb can score a lot of points. And if you're not ready to guard, you know, they can score a lot of points. Now, I know you didn't ask me. The Tennessee Tech women, congratulations. You're a 36-point underdog in round 1.
Go get them.
Are you saying take the plus 36?
They won 17 in a row.
Yeah.
And they got a 16 seed to play the Gamecocks in Columbia.
Hey.
with an angry Don Staley.
Let it rip, man. And by the way, it's Kentucky, Texas, and Florida, Oklahoma, also potential second rounders here.
Yep.
So 3 of them.
Yeah. I mean, look, with 14, I mean, gosh, almost 1/4 of the field, it was inevitable.
It's hard to avoid.
Yeah. You know what's been amazing is, you know, with North Carolina in the field, I haven't really heard anybody complaining about the SEC getting 14 teams.
That's true. They've kind of sucked up all the oxygen. And
well-deserved. Everybody's just kind of like, yeah. I mean, yeah, what you could pick on Arkansas and maybe Texas.
Texas is the one. Yeah. I think the other ones are all solid, but Texas, I didn't think Texas would get in. So,
yeah, winning 2. And they got in over what? West Virginia, Indiana.
And Boise. Yeah.
Boise had 25 wins or whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. You know what the thing I always say, though, is when you're one of the last 4 in, last 4 out, don't put yourself in that spot.
I agree.
You know, I mean, when you're on the bubble, you're on the bubble. Don't complain. Win more.
I agree. Corey Curtis joins us every Monday morning at 8 o'clock here on the program. Corey, thank you, sir. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. It's been great. I feel like we have more to talk about, but there's coffee to make.
There you go. Get in there.
There's golf to watch. Go watch that golf
to watch, too.
That's right.
I don't have cable.
Get
Forget
fired
it.
up. Corey Curtis, brought to you by Tennessee Men's Clinic, joins us every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. We'll react to what Corey had to say on the Titans front. We will get back into March Madness and the NCAA tournament later this hour as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home the $99 yearly Beehive membership with a buzz is always about great service. Appreciate Corey Curtis from News 2 for being with us in the last segment. Joe did not sound like Corey was overly surprised about the Titans' decision to move on from Chidobe Awuzie. We talked about that earlier in the show. You're moving on from a guy that had 8 games of action for you last year, has been a player who has been hurt a lot in his career. Going through the numbers, basically since 2020, he's missed half the season every other year. So he's turning 30 this next season. Do you really expect that to get better as they move forward here? What did you make of the Awuzie decision by the Titans and where they now go at the cornerback spot?
Yeah, look, I think that I asked Corey about the Snead. Does this have any comment on Snead that they feel like, they're going to actually get him on the field this year? And he was questioning that. I do think that Darrell Baker is part of this equation too, as he pointed out. Look, I think Awuzie is a good player. I think he's great in the locker room. And I think that you need depth there, and you just need positions that you don't have to deal with addressing. And maybe they still feel like they don't because they have Baker. Again, Brownlee, nice young player. We know what McCreary is, and then Snead will be the 4th guy. So, again, if you feel decent about Snead, if you felt like this is just going to be another thing with Snead, I don't think you'd make this move. I could be wrong, but I don't think you do. So I have to think that they're at least hopeful. Maybe that's all you can really be with Snead is like have a glimmer of hope. But you just they can't address this position in the draft, right? Like I said, I mean that I guess that's contrary to what I said earlier in the show, which is you just do best available. And so if the best available is a corner when they're up, whenever whatever point, okay. But if it's best available, but it's real close with a receiver, if it's real close with an edge, I still feel like need comes into play to some point. Now, again, they're going to take the first pick. They're going to take quarterback. So they're going need over best available at the highest pick in the draft. So there's that to consider too.
I bet they don't say that though. I bet if they draft Cam Ward, he was number 1 on their board all along. How much you bet?
That'll be interesting. And we'll know they're lying.
That's what they say every time. That's what all these teams say. Nobody's ever like, we had 5 guys ranked ahead of this guy we took on our board, but we just felt like we really needed a position here. So we just did that.
Yeah.
He's actually 30 spots down our list.
Yeah, that's true. Teams don't.
He's always, he was top guy on our board.
But you don't go out of your way, right, to lie.
I wouldn't think so. I'm sure they'll be asked about it at some point.
I mean, it's weird, with quarterback. I feel like a lot of times people wouldn't even answer that question. You know what I mean? Yeah. But this is a year to ask it because, again, most people feel like the best quarterback is the 20th best prospect overall.
Right. Yeah, it's a very strange year to have that be the case. Look, it was important beforehand, before the Awuzie decision was made, for Snead to stay healthy. Now it's critical. You need L'Jarius Snead to be healthy and available for you. And if you don't, let's say Snead runs into some injury problems early in the year next year. Well, then you're right back in a spot where you're looking at corner, and it's pretty thin again. And I like Brownlee. I like Brownlee a lot, what he did in his rookie year, and I think there's some promise there. Baker, I thought was good. They picked him up, and I thought he played fine for him. But if you don't have Snead available, and you've cut Awuzie, that's 2 guys that you were counting on this time a year ago to be heavy factors for your team that now just aren't. So there's a lot of – they really need L'Jarius Snead to be healthy, and not just be healthy. They need L'Jarius Snead to be healthy and to be the player that he was supposed to be when they traded for him to bring him in here, that he was in Kansas City. Because when he was healthy last year, I don't know how much of that we saw either.
Yes, when the relationship between Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi resulted in that conversation to make that trade happen. Now, Mike Borgonzi, here you go. You're on the other side of that deal.
Exactly. So, again, I'm with you from the standpoint of wide receiver an edge rusher, and I would even argue offensive line. I know they've addressed the offensive line.
Need another good
I would
young
probably.
lineman.
I think you need another good young lineman, and that's probably either at tackle or at guard. I'd probably take either one, but I think there are still plenty of positions on the team that you're more worried about right now than corner. I just think you've lost a little bit of wiggle room there with a Woozy now gone. We'll see if there's a corresponding move in free agency. Like, do they bring in another free agent at corner to help fill that spot? We'll see. But I still look at it at wide receiver. They got a lot of work to do at wide receiver. I'd like to see them sign another guy at wide receiver in free agency. I think you have to. And then I'd like to see them draft a couple of them. Again, maybe a problem if you don't have a third-round pick, but I'd like to see you draft a couple of them.
Is this true? Texas saying that Stonehouse and Ackerman are together? I totally
think so.
this.
Yeah. I think Stonehouse is in Miami.
And Ackerman got a job as special teams coordinator or assistant?
I can't remember
Good
what
for
Ackerman's
you,
job
Ackerman.
is.
Stick it to Kaharski, Ackerman.
Let's see.
I'm rooting for you. Every time that the
he's
Dolphins
special teams coordinator in Miami. Good Lord. I can't believe Stonehouse went there.
Let's go. Yeah, right.
The last time I worked with you, you almost got me literally killed on the field.
But to be fair, last year they really tried to kill him when Ackerman was gone. So maybe he's like, you know what? You're actually not as bad as
I didn't even think about that. The fact that he's back with Ackerman. I'm surprised that he was just like, dude, I'm staying away from you.
Hey, man, let's go, Ackerman. Every good special teams play by the Dolphins next year, I'm going to text Kaharski.
Take more of your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025. Our phone number, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Taking your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025. By the way, some news in the AFC South. The Texans and cornerback Derek Stingley Jr., who's a great player, have agreed to a 3-year, $90 million contract extension, Joe. This according to Adam Schefter. $89 million of which is guaranteed. So a $90 million contract, $89 million is guaranteed. What is that? I've never seen anything like that.
Schefter typo? Schefter, did his agent have a typo in the tweet he wrote for you?
Here's a $90 million contract. We'll guarantee $89 million of it for you. That last million you better earn.
Derek, if you do really well, we're going to hold that last $1 million, and then we'll have a little party and give you the $1 million in $5 bills. That's weird. I mean,
it's like, is that, I guess I was wondering in the break, is that because like they don't want to give away fully guaranteed contracts? So it's just like,
say that
we'll essentially give you a fully guaranteed contract without actually doing it.
I mean, Cleveland doesn't mind.
Cleveland does not.
Fully
It's worked out
guaranteed
really well for
contracts.
them.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Houston's like, let's just keep $1 million back so we don't have, because if we give the whole thing guaranteed, then it guarantees an injury like early next year.
I've never seen one done that way.
That's a weird one.
Yeah. But congratulations to Derek Stingley Jr. on his $89 million that is guaranteed.
He is a heck of a player. No doubt about that.
Good gracious. Interesting offseason for the Texans.
Yeah.
Really, the entire AFC South right now.
Texans obviously hated their offensive line last year.
Apparently so.
Sure.
Got rid of all of them.
All of you, please leave.
Taking your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025. You heard Corey Curtis bring it up earlier in the hour, but Jordan Raanan, who covers the Giants for ESPN.com, put it out there on a podcast over the weekend that the deal for the Giants to move up to number one appears almost dead. So everything in the world of football right now is pointing to the Titans taking Cam Ward at number one overall. So then the question becomes, if that's the case and that's what they're going to do, how well equipped is he going to be in year one for success? You've revamped the offensive line. We'll see how well you've revamped the offensive line, but it certainly looks better on paper, significantly better than it did a year ago. And I'm with TD on Friday. Like, I think Zeitler's a big deal. You're bringing Zeitler in and having him here on the 1-year deal is a big deal. So we'll see how that all works out for the Titans. Still a lot of work to do at receiver. I've heard Corey's not the first one I've heard say it, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on it. As you're bringing in a rookie quarterback, what would you rather have? A stacked offensive line or a stacked skill group of receivers? And I think I would lean offensive line too. Now, we've also seen, Burrow come in, and it wasn't his rookie year because Jamar Chase got drafted the year after. But Burrow got hurt, 6 or 7 games into his rookie year because the offensive line was terrible.
Right.
And he tore his ACL. And then they brought in Chase, and they got Higgins, and they went to the Super Bowl in the second year because his offensive line was still terrible, but he could throw the ball to all these different guys. So you can do it different ways. I think offensive line, particularly around here, would be the way I'd try to build it.
Yeah, I've got to pick offensive line of those two choices. And again, it's like if you have the offensive line and it is good, and then you have a running game to go with it, you have good backs, you can take a lot of pressure off your quarterback that way. If you have good protection and you have good running game, you also make your receivers better. You make your quarterback and your receivers better. Not that you can just go out there with like absolutely just anyone, but yeah, I would always pick offensive line first. I also think that for the Titans specifically, Calvin Ridley, a good starting point, not nearly enough with him. And I'll be very surprised if there's not a significant draft pick devoted to that position.
Yeah, I would be surprised by that too. Josh on the text line saying, what do you think about Diggs or Brandon Cooks? Maybe Amari Cooper.
Cooks might be cooked.
Might be. How old's Brandon Cooks?
He's been around. Diggs is
none of these guys are ever as old as I think they are when I look them up. Like Cooks is 31, so he'll be 32 in September.
Yeah, but that can be pretty old, for a lot of guys in this league. Yeah, I'm not I'm not like totally out on the idea of Diggs. I understand, whatever. Had some issues and different stuff. I mean, look, the guy's obviously been humbled. He's at a different point in his career too, right? Like, let's face it, he's not like a star receiver for a top team in this league anymore. And they chose, they chose basically the quarterback, I guess. It's not like that's even a choice, but they chose that it just wasn't worth it anymore. Yep. And so then last year happened. So I don't know. If you believe that he still has some juice, I think I might be able to look past whatever all has happened at previous stops and give it a shot.
Last year, before the injury to Diggs, which was an ACL, he had 47 catches, 496 yards, 3 touchdowns in 8 games.
That's a very low per catch average.
It is 10.6 catch, which was the lowest of his career. The last 3 years prior to that in Buffalo was 11-9, 13-2, and 11-1, and he was down to 10.6 last year.
I'm even surprised that he had 11s when you say that. To me, he's always seemed like a 13 to 15 more type of guy.
2019, he had 17.9.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
In 15 games.
Yeah, and high volume, the more obviously the more volume, that's going to bring it down a little bit. But yeah, that 10, 11, that's a guy who's lost a little bit,
But again, like, I'm with you, but they got to go get somebody. Like a wide receiver, like, you probably need to take a shot on one of these guys. And I get it. Like, it doesn't really match up with, you're obviously trying to get a little bit younger, and you need some guys that are drafted at receiver to come in and be a part of the future here. But right now, in the meantime, like, you need some stopgap players. Like, you need some players, some veteran guys that have been around that can help your young quarterback if that's the way you want to go. Hey, look, there's a 1-2 combination of Calvin Ridley and, Tyler Lockett at this stage of his career really get me excited? Probably not, but I would take it in the meantime while you're trying to build up your receiving goal. It's going to be impossible for the Titans right now, to me, to fill all the needs they have at receiver this year in the draft. Like, at the moment, you don't have enough picks.
If you get one, that could go along. You make a good choice, and that's still a huge deal. Even though Kidney Bean on the YouTube chat is saying, "Don't worry, Traylon Burks is about to become that first rounder."
Might be.
Still
on the team.
The question to me is that second round pick becomes so critical because you don't have a third. So it could be something else again. If it's best available and it's a different position, okay, well, it's best available and it's a different position. Offensive line. If that's their best player, okay. But I just feel like it's probably going to be receiver or edge, and then the other one doesn't get addressed to the fourth.
Right.
Barring changes.
Right. And
that's a long way to wait.
Well, and again, if you're trading back, let's say you trade back 35 and you're able to pick up another pick somewhere along the way. That's good. Now you're also sacrificing whatever player you would take at 35 and moving back.
But that's probably
maybe the way to go, though.
Yeah, just based on the way it's, again, graded. The draft is graded. It seems like the second into the early third, it's a lot of players in a similar level.
Yeah. So, I'm all for a lot of people are wanting. I saw this on Titans Twitter over the weekend of, if you draft Cam Ward, we'll go get Restrepo in the second round, his receiver, which I don't hate. Like, I think he's a good player.
He is very good.
And I think he could help you in the second round, but you're going to need more than him, right? Like, they got a lot of work to do at wide receiver right now. It's good to have Calvin Ridley, and hopefully Ridley and Ward are able to develop much quicker chemistry than we saw from Will Levis and Ridley last year. Again, I'm just operating under the assumption that Cam Ward's the quarterback.
Yes.
Which apparently everybody else is.
Yeah. It's hard not to. Just imagine if that's not the case.
I know. And with the first overall pick, the Tennessee Titans select Abdul Carter.
Take Travis Hunter and smile, walk back to your people with a big smile on your face. I'm telling you right now.
Travis Hunter at 1. Jackson Dart, pick number 35.
Travis Hunter probably play quarterback too, actually.
Pretty good.
Quarterback/cornerback, first ever.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Final thoughts from the text line on the Titans coming up next. Also get back into the NCAA tournament, the bracket for Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final segment of the day, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Still waiting on the Aaron Rodgers front. We talked about that earlier in the show. Of apparently he wants to play in Minnesota, and Minnesota not yet making a decision on that front. So I assume, Joe, at some point, hopefully this week, that's happening. And that one way or another, Aaron Rodgers is either going to be the next quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, or he's going to retire or be the quarterback of the Steelers. I don't know. I still don't buy that if it's not the Vikings that he's just going to up and retire. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you. And also I'm just puzzled by the Vikings thought process here. I would not have guessed this. I guess I just sort of looked at it like, okay, well, they just fully believe in J.J. McCarthy. And if you're J.J. McCarthy and you saw Sam Darnold move on, you saw them not tag him, you're like, okay, it's my job. And now you're seeing this flirtation with Aaron Rodgers. What the heck are you thinking if you're him?
I don't know. I mean, is it the worst thing in the world for him if Rodgers comes in for 1 year to sit out another year and see? Probably not. But the thing is, like, they've been talking him up so much, like, oh, man, we love J.J. McCarthy. It's like, well, do you feel like he's ready to go or do you not? Because that's your first round pick at quarterback. I understand, like, in the short term, maybe you feel like you're in a window right now, and maybe you're scared that going with the second-year quarterback, who for all intents and purposes is a rookie because he didn't play last year, maybe you're worried about taking a step back there. I'm with you. Like, I don't think, regardless of who's playing quarterback for them this year, it's hard for me to imagine them winning 14 games again. Number one, that's extremely hard to do. And number two, it's hard to get things to line up for you to go that way. I guess the question is, like, with Rodgers, if they went Rodgers, do they feel like that's the path to more postseason success with him?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, when's the last time he won a postseason game?
I guess 2020. Is
that right?
I think so, because they were 2021. That would have been the 22 playoffs. They were they had the first round bye, lost to San Francisco in the divisional round. Next year, I don't think he made the playoffs, and that was his last year in Green Bay.
It's been a while, man.
Been a while.
I mean, I'll bet this. I'll bet anybody on this. If Aaron Rodgers is a Vikings quarterback next year, he will not win 14 games, which is what Sam Darnold did.
It's a heck of a bar.
Whatever, just saying. They won 14 games with Sam Darnold. This all tells me the Vikings really didn't think Darnold was that good.
Apparently not. And he's ended up in Seattle. By the way, Cooper Kupp over the weekend ends up in Seattle as well, which he stays out on the West Coast.
It's good for Darnold, potentially.
Him and Jackson Smith and Jigba and a bunch of other guys right now. So we'll see. But yeah, potentially some good news from Darnold there. We'll see what he's got left in the tank there. Going to be interesting to see now that like, when does some of these other guys start to go? Like, when does Diggs and Cooper and Brandon Cooks, when do those guys start to come off the board? Is that later this week? Is that later in the offseason as people are trying to determine what the market looks like, where they're at wide receiver? Like, they're clearly not going to make a ton of money based on where they are in their careers and coming off, in some cases, the injuries that they're coming off. Interested to see when those guys start to come off the board.
Yeah, I would think some this week would be my guess. And then Russell Wilson just sitting there, just waiting for Aaron to make a decision so that he can slink into whatever job is still available at that point. I just like,
he's an interesting guy.
So it's like, is he going to go to the Giants? Just stay with the Steelers, I guess.
What do you think if you're the Giants right now? Like, you wanted, clearly they wanted Stafford, and then they wanted Rodgers, and it doesn't look like they're going to end up with either one of them. And they wanted to trade up to number one. Doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that.
Will they pivot back to a full-on, like, come on, Titans, how about this? How about this?
Maybe.
At some point.
Maybe,
I don't know.
Maybe worth a shot. I mean, right now, like, can you imagine if Rodgers goes to Minnesota, Russell Wilson goes back to Pittsburgh? Like, who's starting for the Giants? Like, Jameis? Is he the starting quarterback for the Giants? So they just take a shot in the dark at draft either Sanders or Jackson Dart? It's like, well, let's hope. I don't know.
You just say shot in the dark to draft Dart. I like that.
Shot in the dark.
Yeah, shot in the dark. Yeah. I don't know. It can't be very exciting for that fan base, but I mean, I'd still be more excited about the unknown, which of course is undefeated, than Russ.
Yeah.
Coming in, right?
It's not a great spot.
Or
to
like
be
you
in.
said, yeah, go with Jameis and tank it out and hope that next year actually is what Koharski thinks it'll be at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Even though there's no actual
Sure, the coach and
evidence
GM
that
be
it will
fired
be.
up about that. Really good stuff.
Yeah.
Another year of losing.
Yeah,
in that market.
exactly. I mean, my gosh.
Brian Dayball,
Tough scene over
come
there.
on down. So, as we wrap up the show here, your thoughts on the path for Tennessee and Vanderbilt as the brackets are now out.
Tennessee earned itself a better path over the weekend. I know, Vols fans are hoping for a 1 seed, hoping for a championship, but they got Lexington. They took that spot from Alabama. They sent Alabama to Cleveland. Alabama has Duke as its 1. I would rather have Houston as my 1, which is what Tennessee has, than having Duke as my 1, even with Cooper Flag coming off an injury. So I think they got some good stuff done. I like how it sets up for them. I think they. I haven't filled out my bracket yet, but Tennessee, Houston, an Elite 8 game, to me is a toss-up. And Houston's awfully good, but it's a toss-up because the Vols that's the top two of the top 3 defenses in the sport, along with St. John's.
It's going to be exciting to watch later this week. Vanderbilt's got a matchup with St. Mary's in the first round in the 7-10 matchup. We'll have you covered on the NCAA tournament front all week. Congratulations as a show to Rory McIlroy for winning the Players' Championship. Rexrode was on the edge of his seat the whole time.
Man, I was going to go to the sports bar that was open right now to watch the rest. I'm very disappointed. I wanted more.
That does it for us today here on the program. We'll be back 6 a.m. tomorrow. Jason Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.